Prinhanda and Cloister, welcome to our third EAS webinar, using Google to enable feedback and collaboration, including Jamboard. Can I ask all attendees to put their name, school and region into the chat so that we know who's with us today? And there'll also be a follow-up feedback form towards the end of the session that we'll also put in the chat for you to fill in, so we know how we've done and further areas that you'd appreciate extra PL on. We have presenters from the EAS and our schools within the region today, and they're going to share with us how they use their Google tools in their different settings for different purposes to help their learners learn. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our very own Dave Ashton to share with you the different feedback and collaboration functions within Google. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you for the introduction, George. So I'm going to talk today about how you can use Google using your Hub account and how you log in, etc., and some of the tools available, including Jamboard. So the first slide, it should come up. There we go. If you go to Google and just type in google.com, as long as you're not signed in on one of your personal windows, you should see the sign in button on the top right. Now, if you click that and then to your Hub credentials, it will then take you to the Hub login window. Now, what I find when I log in is I put in my details and I come back and it still says sign in. I think, well, hang on, nothing's working here. But if you click the 3x3 tile and then click Drive, you'll notice in the top right corner, you have your Hub credentials. And within my Drive, I've already populated it. Now, one of the massive benefits you get from Drive is, as you can see on the left, I've used 36.3 or 36.8 gigabytes of memory. You have unlimited storage in here being a teacher. So it's a really, really good place to put up any videos. So for instance, I'm recording past paper tutorials. It's a really good place to put those files in the cloud so they're not taking up space on my computer, and then I can share those with pupils easily. Then talking about the next thing I was going to talk about was Jamboard. I'll hopefully skip now. There we go. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is Jamboard, and it's something that not many people have heard of before, but it's something that you get through your Google Suite. Now, to get your Jamboard, you again click the 3x3 tile here. Now, mine is in view because these tiles are customizable and you can drag and drop them anywhere you like, so I wanted to see it in view. But what you may also be unaware of is there's a scroll bar here that I've highlighted in green that you can drag and drop to see what other applications you've got access to. So if I click Jamboard, you'll see all my other Jamboards that I have, and to create a new one, I click this plus here, or alternatively within Drive, when you click the new icon, it will come up and give you some different options, and you click more and Google Jamboard will be down there. So what is Google Jamboard? Google Jamboard is a collaborative whiteboard that you can add as many people to that you like. So for instance, I've written out an equation here in black and then asked students to complete it here, and I've been able to add any feedback by using post-it notes, or I could use a pen tool. So if students have tablets and styluses, it's a really, really good way for them to be able to access. But alternatively, if they've tried to just use their mouse and they're unhappy with how they've tried to describe their answer, they can annotate it with the post-it notes again. Another thing you can do as a teacher is you could actually set up a lesson through Jamboard, and you can use the laser tool, which is located here, to highlight certain bits of the video and highlight certain bits in the question and use that as your explanation. So you could use something like Screencastify or Loom or something like that to record your screen and share the explanation with your students as seen in the video there. Other activities you could do with Jamboard include starter activities such as recap and recall knowledge from last lesson, recap and recall or collate knowledge of a new topic that students might have studied previously. Students post a question they have about a new topic before you go into the main activity. In terms of main activities, you could use silent debates, question breakdown, what is the question asking for and how to answer. And in terms of plenaries, you could summarise one thing you've learned today or post a question to another student to answer, for example. So in summary, Jamboard is a collaborative whiteboard that you can share ideas with in real time. You can check your students' understanding. It's a planning tool for assignments, and it can be used as a planning tool for debate and discussion. The next thing I'm going to talk about is Google Docs. So Google Docs is effectively like Microsoft Word, but online. And the example I've shown here is writing a blog from lessons that students attend. So in week 1, pupil A has written a blog entry, and then another pupil within the class has peer assessed that to check for spelling mistakes, etc., etc. And then that will continue week on week. Other things you can do, if I just go back slightly, you then would share that with your students by clicking the share button and adding the students that you want to do, so they could all collaborate and peer assess and redraft in real time. Other things that you could use it for is to set up templates. So for example, if I was going to set my class, an A-level maths class, a past paper to complete, I can have this table that I've created in Docs, and students would get their own copy through Classroom, which I'll show later on, that they can actually add to, so they can add their marks to and add any comments they had about certain questions. And then you can receive that back as really, really effective feedback from students to know how they completed a past paper and how well they did. Also, you could use it as an essay writing template. So again, you could share that with all your students so they could actually annotate their own versions, and you can see how individual students are doing, which again, I will show that in the Google Classroom section. So in summary, Docs is a way to collaborate and share ideas in real time. Many people working at one time, individual copies can be allocated from your template to all of the students in your class or classes, and you can assign individual pupils to complete certain tasks. The next thing I'm going to talk about is Google Slides. I think Google Slides is mostly thought of as like PowerPoint, but you can use really, really powerful template producers such as Slide Mania, which is completely free, to get digital notebooks for students to complete. So students could be completing e-portfolios. So for example, you click on the template that you want, you click on the top right and say use template, and then you would have this template that you could annotate and change as required, and you'd share this with the pupils, as I'm going to show later on in Google Classroom. So for example, students could write out examples from a video they've watched prior to attending your lesson. They can also click insert and insert audio description, so they could actually talk through how they've solved that equation and how they've completed their check. You could also have it to include really key formula or success criteria throughout the lessons that you're going to teach. Now, trying to link this with Jamboard, if a student was to, for example, complete some additional questions and they did this on paper, they could just take a photo with their phone and then insert that as a picture into their e-portfolio. As a teacher, for me to mark this, I can click File, Download, and either as a JPEG image or as a PNG image, I can download that and then upload it into Jamboard and actually use the collaborative whiteboards to mark that and show where mistakes are and write alternative, better ways. Now, what I could do again from that, if I want to take it back to the e-portfolio, is download that as a PNG image or as a PDF, bring it back to the e-portfolio and insert functionality such as audio, where as a teacher, I've given it in blue and I'd expect my pupils to respond with orange so we can tell whose feedback is whose. So in summary, Slides is primarily used to create presentations, but using websites such as Slide Mania, it can be used as an e-portfolio, and you can have additional functionality such as inserting audio feedback to assess people's work. Websites such as onlinevoicerecorder.com are great ways to do this really quickly and really, really easily. Next, I'm going to talk about Google Forms. So Google Forms, again, if you go back to your Drive and you click New and then you click More, you'll have Forms. Now, if you click Forms, if you click the arrow to the side of it, so you can either just get a blank one, which is what you'll get if you just click Forms. But if you click Form from a template, it gives you lots of different options that you can have. Now, if I click blank, I can create something like a piece of flipped homework. So for example, I want to collect who my students are who watch this. I'm going to give them a video from YouTube that I want them to watch and make notes of. And by using the icons on the right, I can add content or add images or add videos or add new sections. Now, something else I've done just to see what the confidence level of my class is I've asked them how confident they feel with the content seen in the video, not confident at all to very confident. I've got a section where they can ask any questions regarding the video, and I've also got a question for them to try to see if they've learned anything from the video, and I can see what the level of understanding is. Alternatively, what I could do is actually set it as a quiz. So if I say quiz, I can insert a picture, and I've taken a picture from a past paper GCSE, and then I've answered it to 1 decimal place, including different units, and to 2 decimal places accurately. I've then said mark all other answers as incorrect. And my feedback for all answers that are incorrect could be check that you have rounded your answers accurately to 1 decimal place. So this would self-mark, and I can assign the number of points I want to give to that. So as this was 3 marks in the exam, I assign this 3 points. So this is a great way of getting your students to complete an assignment that self-marks. So a form summary is self-marking quizzes can be set up. A master can be shared with members of your department to share and collaborate. So one piece of work can actually be shared by all teachers in your department and used for multiple students. And it can be used to share content to support learning and gauge people's confidence and understanding before the lesson. Finally, I'm going to talk about Google Classroom. So you have got access to Google Classroom through your hub. So again, if you click that 3x3 tile, it would take you to Google Classroom. It will be an option there. And you'll see that when you click plus, you can either join a class as a member, or as a teacher, you can create a class. If I click create a class, I then give it a title. I can give it a section which I've left blank, so it didn't really fit my purpose. And then I've given my subject, which was maths. And again, I've left the room as blank. I didn't really see that as a purpose for me per se. Then clicking create, I now have my class. There's two ways that I can get people to join my class. I can either share that code. So if I'm in my actual classroom with students in front of me, I can ask them to write that down and join the class. Or I can go and physically go and add in people. If I click in people, I can start to add people there by clicking the plus icon. I can also add other teachers. Once I'm in my classroom, I then go to classwork and I'm going to say plus, and then plus for create, and then assign. When I'm assigning, I'm going to assign here an example assessment, which is to please complete the questions on the Jamboard and to please complete an entry into your e-portfolio. I'm going to add the previous files that I've shown. So I've clicked add and then the Google Drive function. If I just go back quickly, I've clicked add there and then the Google Drive. And I've chosen the e-portfolio from earlier and the homework assignment equations from Jamboard. And then you get some different options here. Now here, I want each student to have their own copy. So if I click that, Google will automatically create any students in my class. So whether it's S. Jones or G. Bevan or C. Murphy, it will then put them as the starter of my new assignment, and then I can see their individual work. So although I've created one sort of template, it can then be used by multiple people. So for example, here, when I've set up my past paper, I've put in the past paper that I want to complete. The mark scheme is there for them to self-assess. And then the template that I showed earlier, I've again gone and clicked that so that students get their own copy, whereas for the exam, they can view the file. So when I go into my drive, I then get a new folder called Classroom. So for my example class webinar, I can go into my example assignment and I can see there that I get a student by student's copy of each of those things. So I can assess each student individually. If I go into my classwork and say create, and then I choose topic, I can make sure that all my weeks are really nice and easy for my students to navigate around this time. So for example, I've got just my e-portfolio that I want to be ongoing, and then I've got a week beginning the 15th of June and the week beginning the 22nd of June, so for next week. And then I can have all the assignments that I want coming up there. You'll notice that the top one with the rectangle around it is grayed out. Now, the reason why that's grayed out is because that's a draft, because what Google will allow you to do is to create lots of different things that you can release when you want to. So you can get really, really clued up and you can have lots of work ready to set, but you don't need to create it all at the same time. As actually setting it. So what you could do if you had a couple of hours that you thought, right, I really want to get my year 8 class up and running, you could have them all saved as drafts, and then when you want to release them, you can. So the way that you do that is you click onto that. If I click onto edit assignment there, I would click onto the top right arrow, and then I would choose schedule or save as a draft or assign. So if I schedule it, I can actually say it's going to be released on Monday at midday, for example. And I could actually assign it there and then by clicking assign. So for example, within a piece of work that's been assigned here is the Slade Trove assignment, and there was a Word doc that I assigned to my class. If I then click on it, I can see individual students. So if I were to click on S. Jones, I can see the work that she's done. Now, if I wanted to make a comment about some of the work that she's done, I can highlight it and this plus sign comes next to it. If I click that, I can then go and add a comment to give feedback to my student there. And by using a plus before I start talking, that will assign this student. So I just put in their email address there, which I've blanked out. So they get a notification that the feedback is here. So that's been assigned to them. If I find that I'm saying a lot of the same comments into lots of my students' work, if I click the 3 dots there, I can add that comment to a comment bank. So then when I'm trying to give feedback the next time, if I want to make the same piece of feedback about this piece of work, I just put a hashtag to begin and it would start giving me the different comments I have in my feed, in my comment bank. So in summary, the Classroom Summary is a platform to support delivering blended learning. You can make announcements and set assignments for students to complete either prior to lessons or to consolidate learning, and students can have their own copy of any of your files and add information to them. This can then be assessed. There's some really useful links here to webinars from Google around each of the things that I've spoken about, and an additional one for ALN Sport about the accessibility tools that are available in G Suite if you want to go and access these after this webinar that are live, and they will continue to be so.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you ever so much for sharing that. It was a whistle-stop tour. And if you would like any further support with Google, please don't hesitate to get in touch, and one of the advisory team could work with you on some things that Dave has discussed there. The other thing for me is to sort of re-emphasize that we know a lot of schools use Google, but the benefits of using Google through Hub, that equity for all learners will have that access to that large storage, which you wouldn't get with a private license or an organization license, because that's been built into the Hub availability of the tools. And alongside that, if you were interested in transferring, the Hub team would be more than happy to help you transfer from your current Google to the Hub Google, if that's what would work for you as a school. Are there any additional questions that are posed in the chat from the guys that are running the chat for us?
Hi Georgie, yeah, we just had one through from Angharad Jones asking if we could talk through how to add a voice note to work. I don't know if we're able to answer that.
Put that into the FAQs after. So effectively, the website that I shared, which was my audio recorder or myvoicerecorder.com, you would effectively record that piece of audio and you would download that as an MP3. You would effectively then go and upload it into Google Drive, and then you can insert it as audio, which sounds really complicated, but I swear it's not that bad. I can put something together to go out with the FAQs.
Lovely, thank you, Dave.
One more, sorry, George. A few people have said that has been quite quick, so it's just to reassure them that there will be a video of this webinar available for them to go back and watch at their leisure, and a PDF of the FAQs as well, which will hopefully answer any questions that they have to.
Yeah, and reiterating what Adelaide has said there, we can work with individual schools if you would like some bespoke support around Google. So if there is anything that you've seen in that you think, oh yeah, we'd like to have a go at that, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and we can facilitate that to help you and your staff within school. Our next speaker is Stuart Ball from Killeen Comprehensive School. He's going to share with us how they use Google to feed back to their learners and provide collaboration opportunities. So over to you then, Stuart. Thank you.
Hello, from Croeso. So we have been a Google school now for a while, and what I really wanted to do was to build on the examples that Dave has given and show you how specifically we are using Google Suite both to create materials for distance learning, future-proof for once we return back to school, and enable pupils to have personal feedback during this time. So as a sort of an overview, within Google Classroom, the Google assignment function, which Dave showed you, is actually a really very powerful tool. And we're now using it quite extensively as a centre for all our subjects in order to set the pupils their distance learning work. And we're trying to set it in such a way that the classrooms that we're using right now for distance learning will become our schemes of learning in the future. So the particular strength of Google Assignment is that you can set the assignments to go live on a particular date and time of your choosing. That was the schedule function that Dave was showing you, and I'll quickly sort of reiterate what he was doing. Now, the particular strength of this is, in my department, I have some members of staff who are currently sharing responsibility for caring for elderly parents, and they're not available to work at certain times right now, but they are available to work on a Tuesday. And what they do is they sit on a Tuesday and they bang out all the work they do, and they schedule it then for the week. Right, it's all done, it's all set up for them. Now, what we've decided in Killeen is we follow a weekly cycle for each year group. So different year groups have their work set on different days. So for example, year 7 have all their work set on a Monday, year 8 on a Tuesday, and year 9 on a Wednesday, and so on. Using the scheduling tool, our work is in fact for mathematics already set up for the next 4 weeks, so that staff now can spend their time instead of focusing on what materials to set, actually to focus on what feedback to be giving pupils and how to respond to how the pupils are accessing the things that we have right now. Now, as Dave was trying to show you, it is possible to set a self-marking test. Right? Now, we have found that these work best if you make the assignment multiple choice. You can make it self-marking, but unless the pupils enter the answer exactly as you have, Google will tell them it is wrong. So if, for example, the answer is 0.5 and the pupil writes 1 divided by 2, Google marks it as incorrect. It is possible to generate pre-recorded feedback. Lots of people make the same mistakes. We can anticipate them beforehand. In fact, when we set our assignments, and I'll show you, our assignments have feedback for the correct answers and feedback for incorrect answers. Because sometimes we want to make sure they got the right answer for the right reason. Right? Another thing that Dave didn't get a chance to show is the rubric function. The rubric function works particularly well in subjects such as foreign languages and English, and I'll show you some examples of them, but we've actually managed in maths to use the rubric function to our advantage as well. And it allows you to share the success criteria with pupils for each question before they do it. And then when you mark it, you allocate the people who get the marks on the different sections independently. What our pupils like is the assignment function generates a to-do list for them. That means when they open up a classroom homepage, from the perspective that they see, it takes them to what do I have to do for each subject that week. So here is a bit of a classroom as it's seen by pupil. Once they log in, they will see all their subjects listed in front of them. This happens to be 2 maths classes. You can see that in the Year 9 maths class, any pupil in Year 9 that logs in would have seen that they had work on angles to be due in on the Wednesday. And any pupil in Year 8 would have seen that they had some work on volume and a volume assessment to be due in tomorrow. With our setting the work on a weekly basis, it allows us to set all these sort of things up. And what I've done then is I've suspended, as I believe has happened in many schools, I've suspended our normal timetable. So instead of a teacher being responsible for all their own classes, each teacher is responsible for a particular year group. I've allocated 2 teachers to each year group. And 3 in Year 10. And what they do is they set work and they provide feedback on a weekly basis. Now, what the teachers themselves have done is they've made it, they take it turnabout. So in week 1, one of them is managing the work and dealing with inquiries and all the associated problems that kids find, you know, they're unable to upload their files and so on, while the other one is giving the feedback to the pupils. And I'll show you the sorts of feedback that we're trying to give. Then the following week, they switch around. So on week 2, the other person will manage what's going on while the other one sits and deals with all the feedback. Now, in terms of how we set it, this is more or less what Dave was showing you before. When you go to set an assignment, we try to give as much detail as possible in the instructions. Right? In particular, what our feedback from our pupils has been is they much prefer assignments that have a due date. Now, sometimes our Google assignment is something as straightforward as make sure you join the correct Google Classroom. But the pupils and their parents, because the way Google Classroom works is their parents can access it as well, they much prefer to have a particular date for when everything is due. We set all our dates for 6 days in advance to give every pupil 6 days to do everything. Now, this function down here, the rubric, I'll show you how you can use it, but it allows you to share the success criteria, and we have found it has made giving feedback to pupils much easier. It's meant that we can share lots of the same feedback with pupils, and it's made the process much more quick, and it's much more effective in terms of what the pupils are getting. One thing I would say to you is only put 1 assessment in an assignment. If you put more than 1 in, it will not let you import the grades. All right? So if you want to import grades, just stick to the 1 assignment. And the other thing is, in terms of future proofing, give everything you're doing a topic name. That's like your filing system. And it means we'll be able to use all of these assignments that we're making right now in the future as close the gap points, as dirt points, as diagnosis or therapy points, because everything's been allocated a topic. Now, this is an example of a particular question that we set the other week. It was just taken from a past paper. This was a maths question. and we've allocated 5 possible responses. If the pupils have done it and have done it correctly, it will take them off to some feedback, just to explain to them, this is why it was the correct answer. Here, try some of these questions now. If they've done it incorrectly, it's actually the same video, for this is how you should have done it. Here, now try this set of questions. It's a different set of questions. And what that then does is once they've done those sets of questions in the following week cycle, what we then have is a follow-up, very similar question on this. And when we import the marks, because we make, this was question 1, we'll make question 1 very similar. When we look at the mark sheet on Google Classroom, we can see who's gone from getting it wrong to getting it right in the 2-week cycle. And that then helps us inform what sort of feedback we need to be giving that particular pupil. Now, in terms of the rubric, this is the rubric from the French department. So when they are marking, it's much more straightforward in maths. The answers are right or they're wrong, more or less. You're looking at their method as well, but ultimately they've got it right or they've got it wrong. In other subjects, when the way that they mark things, they're actually marking in bands. It was the French department that learned how to use this first and then shared it with the rest of our school. What they're able to do is to detail to pupils, these are the different strands of the marking. So there was things on communication and content, there was other on their spelling and grammar and so on. There were other rubrics underneath. Within communication and content, there were 5 possible bands, right, that you could fall into depending on how you had answered it. So when this assignment was set, it was a question with a Google document attached to it. The pupils had to write a paragraph. It automatically generated a new document for each pupil. The French teacher was able to look at it, mark it, and then when they went to put it into Google Classroom, all they had to do was type the number of points against communication and content and the points against spelling and grammar, automatically adds them up, returns it to the pupil, what they got for each strand, plus the teacher's comments that they put on the document for them to act on. Right, it's really very powerful. In maths, we've been using it for the OCW questions. So OCW questions in maths are 1 question per paper where the pupils are marked on their standard of mathematical presentation. So do they explain their answers? Do they use correct mathematical form? They're the questions that all the maths teachers hate marking and they all hate teaching. But we actually find it works really well for this because you can give them the mark for the maths, separate the marks for the organisation communication, separate the marks for the writing. And it means when you're feeding back to people, you say, well, actually your maths is fine. Where you're losing your mark is on your communication, or your communication and writing is fine. Where you lost your marks was if you did the wrong bit of maths here. Once we've gone through it, we're able to import all the grades. Now, when I was doing this, I thought I was anonymizing it all, and looking at it now, I can see I've taken the names out and then I've left the names in the comments, but it just says Reese. I'm not breaking any GDPR rules, hopefully. If I am, there'll be no recording of this meeting. So it automatically imports across. So this candidate imports across 65 marks, what they've done, and so on and so forth. All I did was I double clicked on them. In front of me appeared their test. I had a quick look through it to see what they could and couldn't do, and then I entered a comment. That took me ages. Then I learned I don't have to do that. All I have to do is click on the export function. It exports them all to a Google Sheet. And then I looked down and I said, right, who has got trial and improvement wrong? Found them all, multiple clicks on lots of names, and then entered the feedback for trial and improvement. It let me do that. I was able to feedback to 81 pupils at the same time because they'd all made very similar mistakes. I was able to put in my comment, you've had difficulty with trial and improvement. Actually, you've not checked it's called the zoom in. You've not checked the zoom in. Look at this video. Please try these questions. Set it as another assignment for them, which automatically goes out to them and their parents with a due date on it for a couple of days hence for them to then send it back to me. Now, if I'm honest, I was feeding back in total 141 children in this classroom because I managed this particular classroom on my own. It took me to feed back to 140 children about 3 hours. As I was doing, I thought this is taking ages. I wonder if it's actually worth it. I wasn't able to show you here because I'd already taken a screenshot of it. Every single pupil responded to the feedback that I had sent them. They really appreciate everything that we are doing right now. And I suppose from their perspective, when they did the test and it came back, you got 65 marks, that was a computer telling them that they had 65 marks. Even me just writing, well done on this paper, Yusuf. You know, I see you put a lot of effort in. You had a bit of trouble with trial and improvement. Here, try these things. Here's another little set of questions for you. Get back to me. It worked, and the children really appreciated it. Across all of our departments, we've done surveys with pupils, and overwhelming that's come back is the pupils much prefer linking to videos that have the sounds of our voices on them, even this one. And I suppose because they trust the sound of their teacher, and they really like even the smallest sentence of feedback, even just well done. And it goes a long, long way. We are now in year 10, we've gone from having about 50% uptake to something in the region of about 80% uptake across our higher tier classes now, just by feedback. The kids like it. Ones that haven't done it, we chase them. We give them a reminder a couple of days earlier. You've got this thing due in a couple of days. If there's any problems that's stopping you, please let me know. Sometimes it's just IT, their internet's gone down, or actually there's things on the go at home, and they just want to tell you that. And but they love that small comment. Now, what we do is we strongly encourage our pupils to respond to the feedback. So there's a bit of feedback that I had given one particular pupil, and that was her response. There's one that was given for the French class. Salut, ça va, travail excellent, encore une fois. Excellent work once again. And they do respond to them. The pupils really like it. When you're doing it, it feels a pain. But I promise you, it's the most worthwhile thing that we do in terms of keeping engagement with pupils. On our surveys, this is what the pupils have had to say. My ticker favourite is the last one. I didn't think anyone was looking at my work until I got feedback from Madam Muggleton. Right? That was one particular, I don't know the word in English, the word in Scots is blind guy. Forward pupil that was prepared to say that, but they said that they like our explanation videos. Now, the way that we're setting them all up is we've now got those explanation videos forever now. We actually rob a lot of Dave's ones, which we haven't done for maths, and pretty good, right? And our kids can't wait to meet Mr. Ashton. But they do like it. They like the fact that they have a due date on them and happen to it once a week, rather than we give them a deluge of work and say, get on with it. Within maths, I did a survey of the staff to find out, am I adding an unreasonable amount to their workload? This is my least IT savvy teacher. This is the woman who at the start of lockdown didn't know how to copy and paste a document. And now she is setting these assignments every single week absolutely perfectly, linking them up to videos, using rubrics, marking them, giving feedback. It does look a lot to learn. Please don't be overwhelmed. Right, I've learned a lot. I'm still under the bus, but I've learned a lot off Dave on this. He's really good at teaching you how to do it, right? It's very quick to learn once you know what you're doing. But the benefit that even this particular teacher sees is, yes, it is work now. And the comment goes on actually. And what she says is, I wish I'd had this time years ago to focus on putting my stuff together, because now I've done it forever. Right? She's actually working a statistics classroom for me. And it's now the stage where anyone could go and teach A-level statistics in my school. What she's put together is so good. Now, my particular fear is I'm going to have non-specialist teaching in my department next year. The people working on my year 7, 8 and 9 classrooms, they're making explanatory videos on the understanding that they might be teaching a teacher how to do it as well. That's future-proofing everything for us, because our parents were saying, I want to help my son, but the way you teach them how to subtract is not the way we teach them how to. I was taught to subtract when I was in school. Can you give us a video of how you want it to be done? So that was our reaction to it. And this was the last slide here, really. The last one was a bit of a barbed comment, really. Hopefully this time investment now will reduce workload for the future, and I promise them that it will. Right? Because what we have done, we've now got lots of comments that go against each assignment, which we're able to hand out to pupils. We've gone from things taking 3 hours to do, and the first time I did it, it took me an hour and a half the last time. It's a 50% cut. And the feedback from pupils is that they really appreciate our little bits of feedback. Now, where we're going now, as of this week, we now no longer just give the written details in the assignment. What you can actually do is also link a video to it. So this week, the Year 12 had a little video of me saying, Shumai, welcome to this week with Year 12. You've done very well. Hope you're all getting on all right, kids. And even this bit, they like to see and hear it. It's that link that they have to school. And whether they're 5 or they're 17, they're still children, like to see their teachers. And we found this has really helped. If there's anything that you want me to know, I can stay on at the end and I can sort of help you and maybe share my screen and sort of take you through live how to do things if you'd like.
Lovely, thank you ever so much, Stuart. Again, if there's any further support or advice you'd like around the use of Google and how you can use it to support your learners with the feedback element, we can share Stuart's email address in the PDF after the event. And if there's any conversations or any questions that have been posed in the chat, guys, that we could ask Stuart now.
Hi George, no specific questions for Stuart yet, but I'm sure they're absorbing all of the things he's shared with them. And if they've got any further questions, keep popping them in the chat. And if we get a chance, we'll ask Stuart a little bit later on, or if not, we'll definitely make sure they're in the FAQs for everybody afterwards anyway. But thanks.
Lovely, thank you, Adelaide, and thank you very much, Stuart. Our next speaker is Sarah Pugh from the Bridge Achievement Centre, and she's going to talk to us about how they use Google to collaborate and provide feedback within their setting. Over to you, Sarah.
Okay. Diolch, Georgie. Prynhawn da pawb, gobeithio bod pawb yn iawn. I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about our journey with Google. It's a relatively new thing for us at the Bridge Achievement Centre. We only actually started introducing Google Drive to staff in February of this year. I joined the Bridge from a mainstream school where we used Google for everything. We were one of the new schools with every child had an iPad. So when I joined the Bridge, along with one of my colleagues who also used it and we joined at the same time, we decided introducing this would be very beneficial to all of our staff. We are as it says on my slide, prior to January, hardly anybody had used Google Drive or Google Suite. So the first thing we set out to do was showing people how to actually access it. And the reason for it, we are a multi-site centre. Staff deliver on 4 different sites, and we also have external providers. So we wanted to be able to work collaboratively with everybody. So the first thing we did was set up a virtual staff room. Now, what we do with this virtual staff room, we have a daily briefing. So previously, the briefing was held on the main site where a handful of staff were. So the rest of the staff weren't actually involved in what we were talking about there and then. They would find out about it later. So communication was limited. So what we use this daily briefing for now, since lockdown, I've got to be honest, it's been a godsend because we can talk to each other and talk about what needs to be done on a daily basis, what jobs need to be done, and if there's any concerns around pupils, if there's any staff concerns, if staff want any training around anything, that's what we're able to do. So further on then into February, we decided that all the documents that we have on site, we needed to be able to access from home. We were unaware of the lockdown that was going to happen. So it was a bit more of luck rather than judgment, to be honest with you. So we moved everything from our drives that was only accessible on site over to shared drives onto Google. And that now means everybody can access it from anywhere. So it's got all of our resources, all of our planning, absolutely everything that you could need. All the ALN documentation is accessible to all staff from home, and they all have Chromebooks to be able to actually do this, something that was only given to them in. So in a very, very short space of time, what I'm trying to say to you is it is possible to move from the systems that you're used to into the new Google system. So lockdown, we had a staff training session, and we decided, myself and my colleague Kath, to introduce Google Classroom. We thought, you know, this needs to be done. But then we were getting wind of having to, you know, close because of lockdown. So we thought, let's do this, you know, as quickly as we can. So we set about training staff around using Google Classroom. And to be honest, they've accepted it so well and have used it so much since this, that it shows that, you know, a really short space of time, you can accomplish a lot. Staff were then given the task to show pupils how to access it. This is in a very, very short space of time, and quite a lot of this work has been done since lockdown. You know, staff have been speaking to parents, speaking to pupils, you know, in accessing it and completing the work that is actually set on it. And since lockdown, we've introduced the use of Google Meet for our meetings and for online live sessions, as well as Microsoft Teams. We use both. And we've introduced a Google Calendar, which means that we can plan all of our staff meetings, all of our, well, anything really, you know, from safeguarding things all the way through to annual reviews. So we're all working from the same thing. So what I want to talk about now is also personalised email feedback that some of our staff have been offering to our pupils. As I said, prior to February this year, nobody had done any sort of online collaborative working. So this is an email that's actually giving feedback to a pupil and a parent on the work that that pupils are doing. The pupil in question here is a very reluctant learner. I don't think I gave you the context, but a pupil referral unit for students who are quite difficult to engage at times. And this is probably one of our most reluctant learners when we were on site. But the amount of work he's been doing now since we've been online is, well, it's transformed him. You know, he's completing work that he would have never have done before. And the feedback that is given by staff has actually facilitated his learning. That was an email that had been sent from the staff member to the pupil. The staff member has also started giving personalised verbal feedback by recording over the top of the Google Slides and the PowerPoint presentations that the pupil is doing. So it's all, as I say, hadn't been done since until February. So it's all a very, very quick process to be able to set up. Another thing that our pupils have been doing since using Google Classroom in Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3, they have been collaborating on isolation diaries. So the pupils in the class have actually been keeping a diary of what they've been doing. It's like a well-being check-in really with their form tutor, with their class teacher, and they're telling us what they're doing. They're, you know, they're giving us an insight into their lives. Some of these pupils, you know, they live in poverty and find it difficult to kind of talk about their feelings. This is a way that's kind of broken down that barrier. They're able to talk to us about things. So this is being done with Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3 groups. And another thing that we offer is support to parents. So some of the parents find it very difficult to access the technology. Some have never actually used it for teaching their kids or supporting their kids with homework. So we've set up guides, and some of these guides are on a Google document, and some of these are also in a video format, so that we can actually reach lots of different families in lots of different ways. You know, lots of them don't want to speak to us face to face quite often. So this is a way of, again, breaking down these barriers for some of our vulnerable learners. As I said, once again, you know, it's been a very short period of time. So our next focus is improving and increasing the access for pupils to be able to work online. Lots of our pupils don't have computers or didn't have them previously. They didn't have access to the internet, or if they did, it was for things like Xboxes. So it's now ensuring that all of our pupils have access, or the majority of our pupils have access, and how we support them in using this. And another thing that we have just set up is a PRU cluster network to talk about good practice of what we do and what other PRUs can do to support the learners using Google Suites. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a good insight into a different platform of learning for some of the learners within the region. Are there any questions for Sarah that have been posed in the chat, Adelaide?
Hi, George. There's just one about access to Google Meet. Somebody said that they found that blocked. So I think Dave's just responding to that now, though, in the chat.
Lovely, thank you. Right, our next speaker is Emma Shepherd from St Julian's Primary School in Newport, and she's going to be sharing with us how Google is used in their primary school to collaborate and feedback to the learners, and how they've used it in all of their different settings with their different phases. Over to you then, Emma. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I'm Emma Shepherd. I'm a Year 4 teacher in St Julian's Primary School. So within this presentation, really, I just wanted to show some examples of our home learning that we're having from children within our school, ways that we're enhancing the interaction and collaboration with the children, and how we're providing feedback digitally. All the examples I'm sharing are Key Stage 2 based as well. So I just wanted to show our digital learning vision. Obviously, this is still relevant, but we're in the process of adapting it to be able to meet the new challenging demands of the blended learning approach to teaching and enhancing the learning opportunities for the children so that they're independent in their learning. So what have we done, or what do we have in place to support digital learning? We're very confident with the use of Google Classroom. We have had it, we've been using it for a number of years now, and it is well embedded across our curriculum. We've enabled a number of opportunities for staff to have training, and we're continually improving our training offers through TeachMeet style. Although in the current situation, we have had to change that slightly. We've been lucky enough to be able to hold these online training sessions through Google Meet, based on digital learning tools and also how we support learners' well-being. For our home learning, we have set it out as a home learning menu. We've found that this is more flexible for children, and they choose the activities that they wish to complete using a range of Google tools, which I'll go over. I also thought it'd be quite nice for us to see some examples that we have been receiving from children from different year groups using a variety of tools such as Google Docs, Slides, Sheets, Google Slides and other applications that they can access through Google, such as Adobe Spark. We've got Mind Maps here, an example of using Mind Maps for electricity, and Canva. So these are just the examples that we've received from children, and we've been really blown away actually, and it's always nice to be surprised by our children. And some more examples from Year 6 as well. So how have we ensured that children are interacting and collaborating with online learning? I've added a quote there. I always love a quote, and this is one of my favourite ones that I try and put in wherever possible. Remote learning has caused great concerns about loneliness, welfare and lack of interaction, and it is really challenging, but we feel at St Julian's that Google Classroom and G Suite tools have enabled us to do all of these things, such as harness technology, provide fun and engaging lessons and activities for the children, enable the children to have an element of choice as well, lots of tools that foster collaboration, and also make sure that the activities are relevant to the learners. So I'm just going to show some examples of what we've been doing in St Julian's, and some of these have already been discussed already. So we have been setting weekly check-ins with the learners using Google Forms. We felt that it's really important that teachers still remain in contact, and at the end of the week we asked the children to reflect on their home learning so that we can gauge their understanding, obviously in a completely different way than what we're used to. We use this information then to plan and guide our lessons for next week, and as you can see, we've got a bit of an emotional check-in here, checking on the learner's well-being, and we can identify any children who need some extra support. We asked the children which home learning activity have they enjoyed the most. So again, checking engagement and motivation, and are there any activities that they found difficult, so we can perhaps give that child an extra confidence boost by providing an activity just for them. We also asked them what they would like to do next week, and again, that informs our planning. We have been conducting weekly class video calls using Google Meet. Lots of parents have said how important this has been for the children to continue interacting and seeing both the children, their peers and their teachers. We try to structure our video calls in a way so that it provides an opportunity to catch up and check in, discuss any misconceptions from the work that they've been set, and give them opportunities to ask questions and feedback their learning. And I think the most important is that the learners are able to see their peers. Our favourite part, I think, I've just gone too far, is the themed weekly challenges. Setting them a scavenger hunt, perhaps a memory game, a quiz, show and tell and bingo. All those are incredibly important for children's well-being. We've been setting teacher instructional videos as well, so this can be just for perhaps an individual task instruction, which we embed into the PowerPoint, or we've been using Screencastify to go through and talk through the weekly menu instructions for the children. Again, I think, as it was said previously, this is really, really key for engagement, and we found that the more we do this, the more children are responding to the activities that we've provided. We also use Flipgrid quite a lot, and this again offers opportunities for interaction with their peers in a safe way. We have opportunities for children to continue to practice their Welsh using the placemat, and children can interact and respond using the Welsh language. And then we've also asked, we can ask questions to the children so they can respond to them really well. And if I'm honest, this is one of the favourite things that the children enjoy doing, and they can access that through their Google accounts, excuse me. We also use Padlet and Jamboard quite a lot, which I'll go on to in a minute. Again, they're both interactive collaborative tools which the children can add to and see each other's answers. This has proved to be very popular because when completing online home learning activities, it gives perhaps that learner who isn't as confident ideas to include in their own work. And we would normally do that anyway in our normal classroom setting that we're used to, perhaps through think, pair, share style activity, but we allow the children to still do that on the collaborative tools that Google provides. So I've got some examples here of things that the children have said about using Google Classroom. I think this really speaks for itself. It shows how the children have engaged with the new way of learning and how it has provided opportunities for communication and collaboration as well. We also set the same question to teachers, and again, we've had really positive feedback. The teachers have echoed its use as a virtual classroom and how it's an invaluable resource for both teachers and learners. And we all know we've had to adapt very, very quickly in this environment and provide these online opportunities that we haven't in this way before. So I think it's great, really. So I know I'm talking really fast and I'll apologise, but bear with me. So I'm going on to feedback now, which is possibly one of the hardest things. It is often referred to as the bridge between teaching and learning, and I think that bridge has maybe slightly wobbled during our digital learning, but I don't think it should be looked at as a negative way. It should be seen as an opportunity to enhance our online practices and the ways that we give feedback to children. So I'm just trying to show you some of the ideas for the way that we use feedback at St. Julian's and online. We believe that feedback should be effective and purposeful. It needs to be time efficient for learners and teachers. It needs to be adaptive for different learners and enable the children to act on the feedback as well. That's really, really important. So here I've just got some ideas that I will go through with you now. Okay, so we've been commenting on children's work, and I think this was discussed previously. You can do that in a number of ways in Google. So here I've got private comments between the teacher and the pupil, This one is a really good example of the dialogue between the teacher and the child. Obviously, he's saying here that he doesn't understand. Can you explain it a bit more? And then the teacher has said that they will create a video and share it with him. So ease of that, you know, so easy to do through the Google tools, and it's also nice because this is private and only that child sees that they're struggling. It's not to the whole class. Another way that you can comment on children's work is edit suggestions. So you don't remove anything that they've written, which I know for some children that can be quite daunting and hurtful. You just edit a suggestion and they can either agree with it or disagree with it. Again, as it was said before, you can highlight part of their work and then click on the add button to comment as well. Again, really good feedback, and the children have enjoyed receiving that from us. Another way that we have been making sure that we've been providing next steps for the children to ensure they're progressing. You can see some examples here, and this is all done in the private comments section on Google. I really like this example of Year 5. You can see the dialogue again between the teacher and the pupil and how this has extended that pupil's knowledge, and all of this we would be able to do in class, but unfortunately that's not possible right now, but we need to use the tools that we have available to us to enable us to do that. We've also been using, I think this was mentioned in the comments previously, we've been trialing the use of verbal feedback, and extensions in Google have allowed us to do that. We're experimenting with Mote, as it allows the teacher to comment on work and it attaches the audio to that comment. It also provides a transcript of what has been said, and this could be useful for perhaps EAL children, and there is a way that you can translate that language, although not all languages are available, and I would suggest you read that transcript very carefully. Doesn't always pick up exactly what you say, so I would always say to check it. These were videos here, and I think we'll include those in the PDF and the slides that are shared after. So we've also been asking the children to self-assess, and again this is something we would continually do in the classroom. So how are we doing that online? The first example here is an example from Year 3. They've been given a Google Slides template, and at the end of that they've been asked to say what went well, what did you learn, what would you improve, and then we use Super Learning Powers at St Julian, so they've asked to reference that as well. In Year 4, we've been traffic lighting, the children have been traffic lighting each piece of work and given an explanation for that as well. And then in Year 5, they've been given a success criteria at the top of their template on Google Docs. And then once the child's completed their work, then they just fill in the cells showing what they have done. And again, this just allows the teacher to quickly assess the understanding, which we would do in school. Peer assessment, again, then lots of positive conversations are happening through Google Classroom, because on Google Classroom it has a Google Stream where the children can upload things and talk to each other. That was one of the most popular answers on our Google form questionnaire. They enjoy talking to each other and still having that contact. You can see that they're very encouraging to each other, and the motivation for children to keep doing the work is there as well. The final example I've shared here is a Year 6 example where they've created the Google Slides and then shared it with their peers who have suggested in a supportive way ways that they could improve their presentation. Finally, I'm talking super fast, we've been doing online quizzes in Year 4 using Google Forms, which I think was mentioned earlier. We've kind of done it differently in Year 4, not quite as advanced, but still really beneficial for the children. You can see here we've got our weekly check-in, we've got the homophone challenge where they need to select the right spelling, reasoning and maths activities, and times tables as well. So it provides an opportunity for teachers to check their understanding and focus on any misconceptions. And that's me done. Thank you very much for listening. I'm more than welcome to have questions as well.
Thank you very much, Emma. Again, what an insight into the powers of Google and how your learners are benefiting from that technical expertise within your school. We have got a couple of questions, I think, Adelaide, have we?
Yeah, we've got a question from Emma Payne, just wondering about whether any of those parts that you've talked about are used in foundation phase at all, or is it just, are you using those solely in Key Stage 2 at the moment? So I don't know if you're able to answer that for us.
Yeah, sorry, I unmuted myself a bit quickly then. We don't use them yet in foundation phase. We tend to use the hub tools more, although normally now in the summer term we give our year 2s a Google login so that we can complete a transition project between year 2 and year 3 on Google Slides, and we will be looking at doing that now. Hopefully in whatever way that we can, but no, we don't necessarily use the Google tools, all of them in foundation phase.
Lovely, thank you very much. Is there another one, Adelaide?
There's been a few questions about Google Meet as well. I think, St. Julia's, you have your own Google domain, am I right? And you use,
yes,
you use things like that. I understand it, but sometimes when you're using Google through Hub, I believe the Meet is disabled for learners, but not for staff. So that may help to respond to some of the other questions. And there's just a question about Moat as well, and asking a little bit more about how you're using that.
So again, we've added it through a Google extension, so I'm not sure whether it's disabled because you're using it through Hub. We've got our own domain. But yeah, we're still in the early stages, but I know there are other Google extensions that you can use as well, which might be worth looking into. I can have a look later and share them with you.
Thank you. I think Dave has also put in the chat a voice recording free software that's available. So if you did want to record an audio file and upload it and put it into a Google Doc or a Google platform, that would work as well. So I think you'll see there's a link to an evaluation form in the chat, so please fill that in before you leave us today. It's really important that we know how we've done and what other support we could be providing for you. And there is that opportunity for bespoke support if you would like any of the ES advisors to support your schools with any of the things you've seen today. And again, I'd like to say a big thank you to our presenters today. It has been a very varied experience with all of the different ways Google's being used. So I'm really thankful for you for sharing that with us. Also, there is an ES team that sits behind the screen doing all the stuff that enables this webinar to run swiftly and effectively. So I'd like to thank those as well. And again, there are webinars coming up. We're sharing them on the Head Teacher playlist through our Twitter feeds. The links will also be on the post-webinar PDF information. So we'll leave the webinar open now for another 5 minutes to give people that chance to fill in that feedback. And we'll populate the post-webinar PDF with some of the videos that Emma has talked about, as well as any relevant links. And Stuart's going to do us a little video around importing something into Google. That was one of the questions in the chat as well. So a huge thank you again for listening with us today. And yet again, thank you to our presenters. Diolch yn fawr.